Welcome to another episode of Rawstocks. This is Rustic, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Tesla daily chart, looking at where price came from, where price is today, and where price is likely to head tomorrow. So we got that manipulation that we were talking about. If you're not following along with me, you can find me hanging out in the Traders Helping Traders Discord, link in the description below. But we talked about the potential for the manipulation to happen today after we got accumulation yesterday, and we're looking for distribution to play out tomorrow and into the rest of the week, right? So in this candle here, when we zoom into the lower chart, you can see, although we headed lower, there was a lot of chop in here. We ended up heading a little bit higher, but that's accumulation. Inside that chop, there were positions being accumulated, right? And what I had said and what I've mentioned is look for the manipulation to happen on Tuesday, which is today, right? And we got that giant candle, right? Things were looking pretty bullish. Price is exploding. Boom, we got slapped back down, right? Accumulation, manipulation. We're looking for distribution to play out. Okay, and what that distribution could look like is potentially trading back into this wick. That's liquidity. We'll mark it off here in a minute. Right, down to the level that we've previously tested that is also offered as resistance and support. And that level is at 238.87, give or take. Right, and could we see continued distribution to the downside down to the 4-hour order block at 233.70 all the way down to 229.87. So we're looking to see if we get that distribution happening over Wednesday, potentially Thursday. So distribution often happens on Wednesday, and it can continue. It can be a continuation of distribution into Thursday, or Thursday could be a reversal. Friday could be a reset where we look for the following Monday to be accumulation again, right? And so accumulation can start to happen on Friday. Doesn't always necessarily, and it doesn't always play out perfectly like it is this week. And so we will look forward to seeing if we get that continued move to the downside. So let's go ahead and look at some of the other things that we've been talking about lately. Okay, I did say we'd mark off a liquidity pool, and that came from yesterday. So I want to notice that in this candle wick here, we do have liquidity built up. We label liquidity as blue. At least I label it as blue. If you're following and charting just like me, we're going to label it as blue. Okay, liquidity pool. You can see we have another one way up here. And liquidity is found in wicks, right? We've talked about it before. We talked about it in great detail back here Tuesday the 12th with a giant wick where we drew on liquidity, sold off into. Okay, so the market is telling us a couple different things, which is interesting because we have the liquidity here, and we also have the liquidity here. Okay, and I'm not going to mark this one off because they're so close, so it's just going to be two liquidity pools on top of each other. But it's an interesting situation to be in. Okay, we already took the liquidity here. Okay, when we took it, we ended up running back up after we hit a key level. And now we are starting to trade down into this liquidity. Now, if the market's going to want to run higher, we're going to want to see smart money. Okay, let this run down as their orders are getting filled. If smart money wants to run long, and that's the play, at least in the short term, if not the longer term, we're going to want to see price come back down, fill the orders that are long in this wick, okay, and then see price run back up from there. Now we pushed up, we've traded back down, we've started to draw on liquidity with today's move, okay, candle closing below the low of this candle from Monday. We want to see a further draw. Look at this one, 1, 2, 3 days where we drew on this large wick before we reversed. Okay, so we're drawing on liquidity. Could we see price come back down tomorrow? Potentially the next day, right? Draw on liquidity. This wick overshot this liquidity pool by a little bit. Okay, so that doesn't mean that we just stop here. We could further push down, right, in order to run it back up. So those are that's a potential scenario, right? Trading into liquidity to run it back up. If we were running it back up, where would we likely be headed? Okay, well, it could be a fake out because we have this wick that also holds liquidity in it. Okay, so if we were to start drawing down, it It could be a little bit of a fake out. We draw on liquidity. We rebound up. We take this liquidity, right? Is this just a draw? Is it a further continuation to the upside? We won't know until we start to see price trade into it and potentially above it. But a little bit of misdirection as far as what the candles are saying. So we're going to be watching very closely over the next day or two to see if we break down past this key level, because if we break this key level, we're likely headed into the 4-hour order block below. Okay. If we just wick it by a little bit and we're not really closing candles much below this, then we might expect that the price might bounce. Okay, but that bounce could only take us back up into this liquidity to potentially trap some bears if smart money is still trying to short this and go short and look for more potential downside. Right, this could be a little bit of a fake out, run back up into this wick, right, and ultimately see something like what we saw here, where sell down, right? And if that was to happen, if we had not already hit this order block and we had come into this wick here, we would be looking to trade back down into this order block below that order block, right? A lot of times when we hit an order block, we're looking for a bounce first. So when we do, if we do head down into this order block, we're looking for some kind of rejection that would take us back up to some kind of target, right? And then potential further sell off down to 223 and some change. And we have this trend line, this nice trend line that could offer resistance. So order block bounce, right? Could we continue down, hit this level? We'd still be respecting this daily fair value gap, right? This is the consequent encroachment at the 223 and some change. So could we see price hit somewhere on this trend line, somewhere on this consequent encroachment, leave this fair value gap open and see price run higher, right? Anybody who's not tracking fair value gaps and not tracking smart money may not have this indication that if this is left open, we might be looking for a bounce or we might be looking for a full-on reversal at that level. It would look pretty bearish if we started getting into this fair value gap, right? Even if we traded a little bit below this trend line, right? People might start thinking, oh, trend line's breaking, we're going lower, right? But anywhere in this range here, the 217, right, up to the 223 and some change, anything in that is still fair game for a rip in the other direction back to the upside. Right? If we close that fair value gap, we could start saying sell side liquidity in this wick at the bottom of this wick, and even further unbalanced price range down to 191.81. Right, so different targets heading to the downside if we were to continue to sell off. Okay. What I suspect is we might see a draw on this liquidity and then start to head higher again. Ultimately, basically, I think trying to bait some more bulls to think that we're heading to a higher high. Right? And if we were to start heading higher and we were to take out this liquidity, we'd be heading towards, and we've talked about this in previous videos, the 1 minute unbalanced price range, which is right here at 252. We were targeting that today. For the people who are following my trades, heard me saying, 250, 250, 252 was a good target. You can see we didn't quite make it. We got to 249.50 basically and reversed in the other direction. So other people are targeting that 250, 250 as well. And so, that might be too obvious that we were going to try to run up into it. And so if you didn't end up closing out your positions, which again, those of you who are following my trades, I do live call outs on the Traders Helping Traders Discord. It's in a subsection of the Tesla chat. And I post my entries and I post my exits and I post my profits there. And so, even though we were looking for 250, 250, we exited almost near the top. We started trimming and then we exited basically near the top. We were playing 250 calls and we were playing 260 calls. So nice trades that we saw executed basically live through screenshots and posts. And so again, if you're not following, join up the Discord, links in the description below. So if we were to start heading higher, right, 1 minute unbalanced price range, we got the point of control from the volume profile on Friday at 254.36 roughly, right? And above that, we have a bearish fair value gap, which we have not traded back to since the candle it was laid. So a lot of times, right, fair value gaps are reverse magnetic or reverse pull, where they push price away from the fair value gap at first, and then price is often drawn back into it to see if it will respect that fair value gap to ultimately head lower. Okay, so we certainly could see over the next week or two play out. That price comes down, again, maybe testing this level, this order block, could potentially see price push up into this fair value gap, right? And maybe respect it and push back down off of it. So a couple different ways that could look. Again, we talked about the scenario. If we come down here, test the order block, test the trend line, right? Then we could see price push back up into that fair value gap, reject once, and then take it out to head back into the order block. And I'll show you what that will look like if we were to map it out using the path tool. So if we were to start trading down, let's say, here to order block, right? Could we see price push up like that? Okay, certainly possible. Let's take another look at another scenario that would take us a little bit lower, right? Could we see, price move in something like that? And then, running back up into that fair value gap, we certainly could, right? Let's map out another scenario similarly. If we were to push down somewhere, right, and we headed back up into the fair value gap and we rejected, we could be looking for a retest. We could be looking for a retest here, right? Areas of interest, let's just say there, pushing up into the order block, right? We do have an optimal trade entry of this swing high to this swing low. That's going to, depending on how far it lands us, it's going to end up in this range somewhere. So could we see price run back on a retracement, right? Come back down, hold the level, right? We'd be looking at this swing low to this swing high. We'd be looking for a retracement zone that would put us somewhere around here if this was playing out. And then could we see a push up higher? Or there's also the potential that you have right here, boom, head, right, shoulder. Okay, so if the head and shoulder was to play out, could we see something like that? And we most certainly could. Right, so all different scenarios, trying to show you that there's a couple, multiple different pathways here as you start forming your different waves and your different structures on the daily time frame. We know that these daily time frames, they can play out, right? This right here, Friday, August 18th, all the way to the high, September 15th, almost one full month, right? So for this to play out and give us a shoulder and potentially a drop, if that is going to play out, right, we'd be looking for that to possibly happen over the course of the next 30 days. We do know that September seasonally is pretty bearish. October is also bearish, and we have earnings coming out, right? So does price want to get run up into earnings, sell the news, right? Or do we sell off before earnings and potentially then run up after earnings, where it could be a buy the news scenario, or maybe earnings comes out, and they're very positive and the market likes it, and it goes running in the other direction. So all things that we'll be looking for. Got to pay attention to a lot of different things when you're watching the market. Let's go ahead and look at the 1 hour time frame. See if there's anything else. I showed you guys a 4 hour time frame where I found this order block. I'm going to skip it this time. We're going to look at the 1 hour, expand that chart a little bit. Right? It does show that today's trading action on the 26th, right? And we look back to the trading in the 25th, which is where I said, right here, and I'm gonna throw it up on a rectangle so that you can see the accumulation, right? So let's just say, even starting on Friday, that we could even look at this right here and say this was, put it as a different color. Actually, that looks too close to the fair value gaps. We'll call it purple, just so you can see it very clearly. But chop, 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 right? We did have a down wick, but ultimately accumulation happening here. Okay, was this manipulation? Right, we ripped it up in the other direction, and then we sold off. Right, so potentially this was the manipulation move, and we're going to see, we've seen the start of potential distribution to the downside. Now you could also argue that we could extend this chop across and say, is this all just accumulation? It does look pretty choppy, just went back and forth. Could we see a Friday move for the manipulation? That's not typically how the how that move works, but you never know. So it could just be a lot of accumulation. We could see a bigger move to the upside or the downside, that's manipulation, and then see a reversal. So we'll be watching those things very closely. Because we got this wick here and this wick here, it does provide a little discrepancy in what the chart is trying to tell us. Obviously, somebody's getting baited, but do we know which side is getting baited yet? No, not necessarily. So really going to be watching price during tomorrow's trading day and looking at the lower time frame charts to see what kind of structure we see developing. We do have the targets, so it gives you the map to know what we're looking at. A couple things we want to note on the 1 hour chart is that we do have a current bearish fair value gap, okay, that we have started to trade into and been rejected on with this wick, started to trade back up to, haven't made it back into it, certainly could see it sell off. I know in aftermarkets it was down a little bit. So again, are we looking for the beginning of we saw the manipulation, are we going to see the distribution start to happen to the downside? Again, we'll be watching very carefully. Another look on the 1 minute chart at the different targets that we got. Again, primary focus is on this order block, and then to the upside, this fair value gap here, which we could certainly see price drawn back into. I have thought, because of the gamma readings for this week and also looking at max pain, that we certainly could see a move tomorrow to the downside, and then again a reversal into Thursday, potentially into Friday, where we get a little bit of a squeeze and we start to head higher up into the 250s, start to take out some of these. The fact that we've left these, especially these 1 minute unbalanced price ranges for so long, leads me to believe that price is going to want to trade up here sooner than later. I don't often see a lot of 1 minute unbalanced price ranges left open for an extended amount of time. So I do suspect that we're going to start taking some of those out in the near future, whether that's this week or they wait till next week to potentially make those runs. I am watching those. Okay, so again, 1 hour fair value gap bearish with an unbalanced price range in the consequent encroachment, or the 50% of this fair value gap. High confluence area that we'd like to see price run there. That's why I was targeting today 250, 215. But as I started to see price change on the 1 minute, we exited all of our positions. I did try to re-enter and accidentally closed out my positions when I was trying to fill a limit order, and it ended up being a blessing in disguise. So I got totally lucky on that one, or I'd be bag holding 260 contracts right now. So we'll again look and see what happens when market opens tomorrow, but definitely excited for the next trading day. Going ahead and looking at the 15-minute chart, going to expand this a little bit, shrink it up, take some of these out, but we have a order block inside an order block. Okay, order blocks inside of order blocks are, again, just like fair value gaps and price points, high confluence. We're looking for that as being a more likely target, because this order block, being a 4 hour block, is a much wider range. So it would be likely to say that if we were to head down and target this order block, we'd be looking for the 230.39 down to 229.83. We'd be looking to hit that order block inside the bigger order block. Okay, so smaller time frames will give you the order blocks inside the bigger order blocks so that you can see. But this 4 hour one would not be on your chart if you did not mark it off. And I like to mark off some of the higher time frame order blocks and fair value gaps as in using the rectangle tool, so that I can see when I drop down to lower charts where that is. Just like this liquidity pool right here. This is from the daily chart. We can see it's a big range. We've come back down into it. We've come back down into it, right? Draws on liquidity. We see the manipulation to the upside after all this kind of chop, right? And then we see the start of what could be distribution. Okay. Come down here, draw on stops. Didn't quite run into the liquidity, but came up to the where stops might be in these candle bodies. Okay. Come down, run the stops, come down, right? Are we going to run back up a little bit, start to distribute to the downside? So again, looking at this liquidity pool, if we take it out, coming down to the fair value gap, targeting this 230 if we're heading to the downside. And again, upside, 1 minute unbalanced price range, point of control from Friday's volume. 1 minute unbalanced price range, consequent encroachment of the volume imbalance. These are starting to get pretty high up there, so we won't worry about them too much, but we want to make sure they're on the chart. So I'm going to tell you the price ranges because a lot of people have been saying, hey, can you call out the price when you have specific things you're looking at? So I'm going to tell you 1 minute unbalanced price range to the upside is your first target inside a negative 15-minute fair value gap, which is also a bearish 1 hour fair value gap, and it's 252.13. Okay, the point of control Friday volume is 254.26, and these are give or take, as close as I can get them. 1 minute unbalanced price range further to the upside, which also is in a bearish fair value gap, is at 259.15. We have a consequent encroachment of a volume imbalance, 261.12. We have a 1 hour unbalanced price range to the upside, 262. We have a 15-minute unbalanced price range and a consequent encroachment of a fair value gap on the 15-minute chart, 265.55. Above that, 1 minute unbalanced price range, 266.12. And even further up inside another fair value gap, we got a 1 minute unbalanced price range, 269.15, which also sets in a large order block up above. Okay, so those are the prices that we're watching to the upside and to the downside. Dropping down to the 5-minute chart, we're looking at something similar. We had that early sell-off. We had this accumulation in this range here. We had a move for manipulation, right? We started to sell off. Are we going to come back up here, test this fair value gap here tomorrow and see further distribution? We have another 5-minute order block that we can target at 235, 236 area. Okay, 236.27 down to 235.38. So that would be a first target. I want to draw your attention to the 5-minute fair value gap right here. I'm going to label it with horizontal lines so you can see it inside of the liquidity pool. But we have a fair value gap at 241, and that fair value gap on the 5-minute chart drops down to 240, so 241 to 240. And what we'd be looking for is, if price wanted to run higher, would we see it come down into this fair value gap, respect it, and then run? Possible. But if we take out that fair value gap, the only thing left is this sell side liquidity, and then the 5-minute order block, and then the larger order blocks below that we already talked about. Okay. And as I drop down into the 1 minute, which is by far my favorite, this is what I trade. I trade the 1 minute chart. Okay, you can see 1 minute and 5-minute have some. Let me see if I can turn this one off. No, I can't hide that one. Anyways, so we have a right here order block came up, tested the order block. Right, this is from Monday. So why did price drop today right to this order block? Right, it dropped there because it's an order block and it wanted to test it and see if it would hold. So we got that early morning gap sell off, and then we ripped from there. Right, so this was the fake out to go short. The manipulation was this move right here. Boom. We had accumulation. Right, we did this back and forth, accumulating orders. Fake out, run the stops, stops here, into the order block, stops here. Okay, run the stops, manipulate, run it back up, distribution. Can we see it come back up here into the fair value gaps? We talked about it on the 5-minute. We're talking about it on the 1 minute. Got a break of structure right here. So we'd be looking for what is a break of structure that hasn't been tested yet? It is a unbalanced price range. Okay, so I'm going to start calling them M, M1, M5, M15. Okay, minute 1 minute. Unbalanced price range. So could we pop up here? Could we pop up into any of these fair value gaps? Certainly. Could we pop up even to this order block? Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that. Or is it a 1, 2, 3, like an ABC move, something like that? Certainly could be any of those, but we'd be looking to see, does it take out this unbalanced price range and balance it? Fair value gaps above, fair value gaps, order block, right? If it respects this order block, could sell off. If it takes the order block up, we're looking to head higher. Buy side liquidity right here in this wick, buy side liquidity in this wick, okay? Unbalanced price range up above, buy side liquidity, well, this is higher than this. So we'll just be saying 3 levels of buy side liquidity with a order block here. So take out these things, head higher to buy side liquidity, head higher to 1 minute unbalanced price range. If we start heading higher, that's what it's going to look like. The 1 minute chart really gives you a lot of great structure as far as for day trading. If you're really looking for like entries and exits, something that we looked at today. If you zoom in, I'll show you. We were really like quick about entering and exiting, but I am going to show you. We had fair value gaps that laid here and here. They got taken out, right? And you had fair value gaps here and here. And so when those fair value gaps laid, I took a long, I scalped it really quickly. Okay, as you know, in an attempt to close the gap, I scalped it, but I think I exited in this candle on the rip up, and then we sold off. Okay, I didn't get the tippy top, but I did sell off on this candle, and I looked for a re-entry, and there were some other indicators that I was looking at, but we traded back in, we closed this fair value gap, and we headed back up, right? And when this move came down and it didn't close below these lows and it started heading up, you can look for this change of character to happen, right? And as soon as it did right here, this wick comes up, takes it. The very next candle was a breakout. So that was a nice move. I scaled off back up here, and then we were watching a trend line. Just for those of you who've been following, we were watching this trend line at first, okay? And then as I posted, I adjusted the trend line out a little bit further, okay? And then when you see the breakdown there, that's where I tried to re-enter here, and then as I thought it was going to bounce, and then I ended up actually closing out very quickly, like I said, on accident, but blessing because we ended up selling off after that. Right? So how trend lines can help you, and then again, if we're looking at this top here, we got a new trend developing as resistance to the upside, and if you extend it all the way out, didn't quite get back to testing it, so we'll see if it gaps that trend or if it wants to continue to respect it and head to the downside. And again, those are on 1 minute charts, so you can be adding, if you're live charting with price, I suggest you, or at least what I use, is the Smart Money Indicator by Luxalgo. It's free. It gives you these break of structures, these change of characters, it gives you fair value gaps, it gives you order blocks, it gives you all different kinds of things like that. And so it really can be useful to start there and then start putting in your levels, start putting in your liquidity pools, and start putting in the other things that you're going to use to monitor price for that day. And then as live trading is happening, you can start drawing your trend lines and connecting the dots and saying, if we drop here or break out here, right? And looking at things like this. Trend came back down, we broke above, and now we're below it again. So similar to that other resistance line I just showed you, are we going to try to come up here? If you connect these two, right, we can see that there's some confluence right here that, I'm going to pull it through. We can see there's some confluence here where we could come up here and it would reject this as a back test, and it would test this trend line here, and would it respect it and trade lower as we see that potential distribution that we talked about earlier. So different things, different tools, different ways to watch price. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. I really appreciate the support. Go ahead and drop a like, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, please. We got some new merch out. The links are in the description below. And again, if you're not following me hanging out in Traders Helping Traders, please jump in. We're calling out live shots today. We had 25%er, had 50%, scaling off of the contracts we had. So lots of people making lots of money, winning on contracts. We're going on week 3, only having one losing trade. So hopefully you guys get in on some of this. I'm having fun doing it. I'll continue to bring you guys new content every day and the weekend editions. We're also looking at setting up a live charting session where we can start to have people in a room where you guys can join as I set up my chart for the week and you guys can follow along. Really just aiming to try to help educate traders in order to, one, trade like advanced traders, learn the tools, learn the techniques, but also to be able to be successful in your trading career. So again, thank you guys for all the support. Don't forget to watch the new tutorials if you're a beginning trader. I got new tutorials coming out, trying to do them daily until I get through all the tools and the content, and then we'll start to look at doing advanced trader tutorials, which again is more in-depth descriptions of how to read price like I do, how to use the smart money indicators, and hopefully eventually get to the price where you don't actually even need to use the indicators in order to see where price is going. So thanks for tuning in. Look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow.